Can't you just call this podcast?
No, it's got a name. It's got a name. Don't worry. Don't worry.
All right.
It'll all come eventually.
Okay.
So welcome, wife, and listeners, predominantly my lecturers, and potentially in the future a load of students who unfortunately have to sift through this stuff. I don't know how it's going to work. To the thought experiment. This podcast has a name, but I can't tell you what that name is because that would give the game away. I'm going to explain as much as I can explain without completely confusing you as much as I was confused for the last, I don't know how many weeks since I knew this was going to happen. But basically, the thought experiment is my first module. It's 20 marks. As part of the module, I have to run a blog that will blog my thought process and the journey that will lead me to the final piece, as it were. What that final piece is all I know is that it's a presentation that has to be 4 minutes and 33 seconds long, and the presentation can be anything, but that
Interpretive dancing.
It literally could be. I'm not even joking. It actually could be. No, you're right. No. But there's also a poster, so I have to submit a poster. And again, the poster there's no confines on what the poster could be either. That could be like a 3D thing. It could be fabric, because this is for like the whole visual communications and the wider arts. So even like glass and fabric, textiles, all of those people are doing the same module, right? So essentially they give us, or you pick a number. I had to pick a number between 1 and 101. They gave us a thought experiment based on the number that we said, and we're not allowed to change it. And all I was the main information is that it's not necessarily about the final product, it's about the journey, which for you and for me is going to be a really weird process because we're a bit more solution orientated and we're kind of graphic design minded. We're like, okay, here's the problem, there's the solution, boom.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured the best way that I could do that and also go out of my comfort zone is to do the podcast. You knew I wanted to do this anyway, and I wasn't sure how to do it. And this is how we're doing it now. That's exciting. Mm-hmm. And then also I can upload this to my blog and then share like my thoughts. But mostly when I heard what mine was, I immediately was like, I want to include you in it because one, you have a brilliant mind. I'm biased. You're my wife.
I was going to say you've married me, so
yeah,
exactly. I think you're biased, but
exactly.
Thanks.
But also the topic, I feel like you're going to come up with some like really great stuff.
Pressure.
Yeah, I know, right? So I'm just going to read through. I wrote my first blog today before I did this, and I also set up the blog, and I'll show this to you after, I suppose. You can read it. You can read the whole thing if you want. Let me just check my notes. So yeah, here these are the only notes I wrote down. Embark with no preconceptions and a mind for discovery. Do things rather than think about things. Introduce yourself into an unfamiliar practice. Focus on the journey. And yesterday, before I got given what I was doing, I was like, this is wanky, and it's also causing me an untold amount of stress for no reason, because I was like, just tell me what I'm doing.
I think it's the vagueness of it all.
Exactly, yeah. Mm. And I was like, I thought I was going to hate it. And then thankfully, what I got given, I was like, I love it. Whereas like somebody got given the a drink while urinating. Mm. And I would have just hated that so badly. Even down to the fact that...
Drink while you... I don't understand.
That was a thought experiment. And then they have to go on this creative journey to come up with a whole thing
around drinking whilst urinating.
Yeah. And like everyone keeps talking about like, oh no, the ones that they've seen do that was the best one. All the lecturers were like, oh no, that they come up with the best. And I was like, okay, I don't know if I'm equipped for this.
Some sort of like circle of life kind of thing.
Who knows? That person, like, this is the joy of it. Like, even if you and I have a conversation and we go off on tangents all the time and we change our mind and we usually kind of come to some sort of thing at the end. That's always been our life. This is the joy of that, is that like me deciding, oh, okay, I'm going to completely change in the middle is completely okay because I've documented the process. Is the gist that I was getting.
All right. Okay.
Okay. So the guy is called Roger Paul Drought. I don't
Never
know.
heard of him.
No, me neither. They kept saying things like it was called a Pachachka, and I just kept looking at them, and then when I saw it written down, I was like, that doesn't even look how you said it. Anyway, so my thought experiment is swallow your emotions.
Right. Okay. Right. Cool.
How cool is that?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's quite a. There's a few things you could do with that, isn't there?
Exactly. Do you get why I was like, I'm gonna record your feelings?
My feelings.
Well, no, I felt like a lot of my emotional work, I feel, is very interlinked with you. Only because I've always been an emotional person. That's no surprise. But how I handle those emotions and how I've grown as an emotional being is, in a positive way, I feel is predominantly down to you. You've given me like a really safe space to be myself. And then also, like, you know, from the minute I met you, I was like, I'm marrying you and I'm going to spend my life with you. It's a pretty emotional experience. And like the biggest emotional experience I've ever had. So I wanted to like involve you in this. Also, you know, talking about emotions, like I find it probably the easiest with you. And also it's most important, in my opinion, to talk about emotions with you as my wife.
Well, yeah.
And then also...
What page we're on, isn't it?
Exactly. It's always handy to know what page you're on. But also, you talk about emotions with people for a living.
Yeah, it's kind of my job.
Yeah. The one thing I will say is obviously this potentially could go live. So be careful on what you say in terms of how much you want you be comfortable with people hearing and it being published.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, yeah, like I haven't said your name.
I think it's pretty easy to find out. I'm your wife, so you've only got the one.
Exactly. So that's as long as you're aware of that, and then you know, anytime you think, oh, actually, I'm saying something I don't particularly want. For the time being, for the process side of things, like the lecturers are the only people that kind of are involved in that, and then anything public facing, I think that will just be the presentation, I think. And Gav's a lovely guy. I think you'd like him.
Cool.
Fingers crossed he might actually be your lecturer in the future. That'd be really exciting. when you go on your own emotional journey and embark.
Plenty of emotional journeys, thanks.
I know, right? So let me tell you, the book that the experiment comes from, there's like 101 of them, and then they will have their own page. I don't know whether, like, when I heard, I immediately had my own ideas, and then I heard what the page was, and I was like, oh, shut up, man. I'm gonna go over here. So I don't know whether you want me to tell you what my immediate thoughts were, or whether you want me to read this to you.
Read it to me first.
Also, bearing in mind that I can't remember when this book is published. It says 2002, but it's just the 2002 edition. This is like really old, like, and he's old. It's come from a time in the future. So
in the past, you mean?
In the past, sorry. Yeah,
he's old and it's old, so it's come from the future.
That's probably a different thought experiment. But yeah, okay. So, it's got like some notes. I think they all have different notes. I don't. He didn't seem to talk about that. It says that the effect is supposed to be calming.
Right.
We tend to forget that the ideal among the best of men for many a century was to rid themselves of their emotions, being able to shrug off that chaos, dump that load, stifle those harmful fires These were noble tasks. Romanticism, it must be admitted, has not helped us in this forgetting. It turned emotions into a huge adventure and treated them as signs of a great destiny. Under its influence, they have become glorious and sometimes grandiose, enviable at any rate. The classical age, the inheritors of antiquity, did everything they could to marginalise them. Emotions were to be banished. Examine the ideal of the sage in antiquity. If the sage is happy and to be admired, it is because he has freed himself from that tyranny of the emotions. He lives beyond their reach. He ignores them, having become impermeable to their existence. The sage is never moved. You will probably never be a sage, but try all the same to swallow an emotion. When it arises, refuse to go along with it. Regard it as you would a boil, an inflammation, a temporary swelling. Irony, and it will go down, or will it? Oh, and will it to go down, sorry. Try and look at it from without. Yes, that's it, from without, from where it seems both laughable and unpleasant. Don't enter into the emotion. If you find yourself inside it, find a way out. Press it down. Don't get too involved with that task either. Let it go. Naturally, this is sometimes very difficult to do. If you are tormented by some anxiety, submerged in some dread, transported by some joy, swallowing emotions promptly and completely is sometimes scarcely impossible, but not impossible. Oh, I read it wrong. Scarcely possible, but not impossible. Sorry. The important thing is to set yourself an ideal, either a life without sadness or panic, without heat or enthusiasm, a storm-free existence, or else a life made up of contrasts, implosions and explosions, terrors and ecstasies, laughter and tears. Try experimenting with a foretaste of one, then the other, or else you can invent an alternative humanity. Invent an alternative. Humanity will forever be in your debt. So I read that and I was fairly wanky. I find it fairly wanky. We need a better word than wanky. Just a bit
overindulgent.
Yes, thank you. Yes, some themes that I.
What is the purpose of this book? Why did you write it? Is it like a self-help book, or
hang on?
Is it Is it meant to be poetry, or?
Okay, so short, esoteric yet instructive experiments such as rediscover your room after a journey. Students choose a number and then read their experiments aloud to the group.
Okay.
Yeah, I think basically it's just supposed to be a thought experiment. That's what the whole thing is called. It's
a weird one though, because he's and I'm obviously going to go off on one because I always go in wrong directions and often...
No, there's no wrong direction. Welcome to the thought experiment.
So the weirdest thing though is when you first read it, what is it? Swallow your emotions.
Swallow your emotions. Right, okay. And so what was your first thought?
My first thought was using your emotions for sustenance. So the exact opposite of what he is implying. He's implying getting rid of your emotions. Whereas when you said swallow your emotions, that made me think of eating, and eating is to provide sustenance. And then obviously you've got different types of food. You've got junk food that isn't really good, so there's going to be some...
I love you so much. Honestly, this is the same as me.
This is going to be like, you're going to have some emotions that are like junk food. They sustain you, but they don't necessarily give you what you need. And then you're going to have fruit, vegetables, for example, or you might be deficient in iron. And so, getting, not just like red meat and stuff, but getting your protein and stuff in. So there might be specific emotions that you need to hunt down and find. Like some people that I work with, they're only really used to experiencing certain emotions, and because they've never had the opportunity to feel certain emotions, they're kind of they have like a deficit then, in that when they're put in an environment where you think they should feel that emotion, they don't. So you have to kind of like teach them what that feels like and help them tap back into that. So in the same way that you might be deficient in vitamin B, and so you need to eat food that will give you that, then there are some emotions I think that you can be defective with and need to increase them. So and also like what he's asking, it seemed to be like he was asking us to try and be
men.
Not even
That masculine idea
not even,
of not letting your emotions take over.
The really weird thing, right, is yesterday I was in my work and...
Sorry, we should probably briefly explain what your work is without saying what it is. Like, just explain what you do.
No, I can say, like, my job is to work with young people who have substance misuse issues.
There we go.
My job is to try and help them achieve whatever... Well, not whatever goal. If their goal is, if their goal is to keep getting drunk, then I don't help them achieve that goal. But my job is to make them to give them the safe information and to keep them as safe as they can be, and to help them manage a way of reducing or stopping their substance use. Then, and sometimes it's a bit more than that, but in a nutshell, that's basically what I do. But this wasn't actually about any of the people that my young... This was actually about one of my colleagues. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember. They were talking about... was it... I don't know if they were talking about Buddhism. That's that. One of my colleagues said something about how when they're older they want to go to like a retreat, like a retreat in like Sweden or something like that, and do some meditation and really like find their zen and all that sort of stuff. And I immediately was like, why? Like, what do you think you're going to get from that? So they were like, well, I think you go to this place and you'll learn like chanting and mindfulness and meditation and, be out there in nature and be guided by someone who's, does all that and is perfectly zen. And I was like, right, okay. This person that you go to this retreat, do they live at that retreat? So they're like, she's like, yeah. I was like, right. And the fact that it's a retreat suggests that it's isolated, right? So she was like, yes. Yeah. So out of it all, really. So they're in their nice little nature environment, and all they have to worry about is meditating and mindfulness and eating like fruit, veg, and eating clean. That's like as complex as their life is.
How assumptive of you,
right? Well, no, it's the same. It's the same with and again, I'm not trying to have a go at anyone, and I'm not saying that I'm so correct.
Bitter. How dare they?
I'm not saying that I'm correct. There's every possibility that I'm not, but it's just, this is where my mind went. I don't think... I said, right, okay. Say, for example, you had a client, right? So they were like, yeah. I was like, and for some unknown reason, we get enough money, funding or whatever, to put this client into rehab. A rehab away. So it's not us helping them get to where they want to be, to some form of recovery in the community. They're going to go away to this rehabilitation centre. And they've just been referred to us, right? So they've only just come to us, and then we're going to put them in this rehab.
Right.
She's like, right, this would never happen. We'd never get the funding for that.
Yeah, sorry.
And I'll explain why. So they go do that retreat, and then they come back, and they'll relapse. And they'll relapse because they're coming back to the same environment. They've had that lovely experience where they've had all the therapies and all of that sort of stuff, but they've never actually had the opportunity to feel those emotions in a place that is not safe, in a place where you are judged, in a place where you have responsibilities, accountability, and you have to manage your emotions in those situations. We would never do that. You have to try really, really hard in the community to get yourself into recovery before you're going to stand a single chance of getting funding to go into a rehab. Yet, the same person who knows this, because she's my colleague, we all know that is a thing, is thinking about going to a retreat. And it's exactly the same thing. She's going to go to this place where she doesn't have to worry about working, where she doesn't have to worry about paying her mortgage, where she doesn't have to worry about her kids or her husband or all of that stuff. and she's going to find her zen. And that's going to be great. But as soon as she gets here, as soon as she comes back to jolly old Wales, she's going to lose that zen. Because life is not about zen. It is not about zen. It's about feeling your emotions and managing them. Not getting rid of them, not eradicating them, not feeding them, but just feeling them, acknowledging them, looking at why you're feeling them, and then letting them either direct you, or maybe they might be something that you're not comfortable with and you might need to think about it and change how you're thinking about things, and that might change the emotion. But ultimately, your emotions aren't something to be put out. They're not a fire. They're food. They're nourishment. They are something that you should feel and understand their worth. Sometimes they're junk food, sometimes they're fruit or whatever. But ultimately, you need to feed, you need to feel them all. You need to have all the different types of things. Otherwise, you're going to, I don't know, be getting petrol and seeing a chocolate bar and grabbing that chocolate bar anyway if you don't have chocolate bars enough. You know what I mean? You're going to miss certain emotions. And that happens a lot. If you're someone who's, again, someone that's grown up in chaos, be that, you know, family or whatever, or you grew up around substance misuse, whatever, chances are when you're older, you're going to struggle with peace because you've been around chaos.
Yes.
So you will automatically start orchestrating things to make that chaos happen because for you, that's comfortable, that's safe, that's what you know, that's how you deal with things.
Is there also an expectation
that
that
things
it's going to happen anyway?
Absolutely.
So why not? Like, they almost naturally cause it and stuff.
Well, yeah, it's learned, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's that whole thing as well of like, chances are if you've come, and this isn't the same, this isn't for everyone, because it's not like all kids that grow up in a family with alcoholism or drug abuse or whatever, or mental health or whatever, will end up having substance misuse problems. That's not the case. However, statistically, it's more likely to happen. Just because you learn when you're a child, your brain is like a sponge. You absorb all that is around you. And so if you are raised in chaos, you're going to learn certain ways of communication with people and how uncomfortable emotion should be dealt with. And I think that's part of the thing. This whole passage that you read in the book about getting rid of it, that's part of the problem, I think, when people feel anger, rather than swallowing it, taking it, feeling it, they try to get rid of it. They punch walls, or they kick doors, or they yell at someone, or they kick their dog, or whatever.
Kick the dog?
Apparently some people do that.
Oh my God.
But you know what I mean? They try to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Which can be helpful in some situations, like not if you're punching a person.
I was gonna say,
But I mean,
no.
I mean, like, say for example, if you choose to do running, I've worked with plenty of people who form of exercise has been really helpful with their anger. They'll run until their body aches, and that makes them feel like they've got rid of it somehow, that they've cleansed it somehow or whatever. But again, they're still feeling it, because that whole time that they're running, they're angry, so they're feeling it. Whereas that time when you're like kicking the door and all of this sort of stuff, I don't think you're really conscious of why you're feeling it. Whereas when you're exercising, when you're running, you're thinking, because it's such a monotonous thing to do, to run, to do the same thing over and over and over again. So it's going to be impossible not to start thinking about the conversation that led to you being angry, or why you felt angry, or the thing that you couldn't do that made you feel angry, or whatever, you know? Plus, when you're doing an exercise, you're releasing feel-good endorphins. So that's also going to help bring other emotions to the surface. You might feel angry, but whereas before when you were in the house in that situation, you probably felt angry and claustrophobic. Whereas now you're outside running or you're exercising, and now you probably feel angry, but revitalized or empowered rather than trapped. So what I'm trying to say is I don't think the key is avoiding emotions or getting rid of emotions. I think it's about feeling them and managing them.